Welcome back to episode, I believe this is 11, because I had a little celebration for number 10.
Yeah.
There was no real celebration, but it was just me on my couch doing a little dance. But we just finished Dunaway's bracket challenge payoff, and we're here celebrating with some drinks at Odie's in Homewood. And so after reading these questions, I felt like they were good conversation questions. So I have E.G. and Dunaway here with me. They were gracious enough with their time after a long day of travel.
We've been in the car together since, 7:30?
Yeah.
7:30.
Yeah, so thank you guys.
Supposed to be 7, but it ended up being 7:30.
Yeah, because I was late. I'll just go ahead and say it. Okay, so our first question is from Jordan, who asked if this is our first media days and what are you looking forward to most? I have been, obviously Dunaway's been to a million media days. I've been to a few, and I don't know if did I already say what are you looking forward to most? I'm brain dead a little. But, E.G., I'll let you
let's start.
Elaborate on this.
So this will be my first SEC Media Days. I'm so excited because my first year also is the year where Texas and OU are joining. So there's some added excitement around it for sure. And I love just the element of a little bit of chaos when it comes to football season. And I love the chaos and adrenaline that you get when you're talking to coaches, you're talking to athletes. You guys know my background is sideline reporting. So this is getting back to my roots of talking and interviewing, and it's the biggest stage, one of. So that's what I'm looking forward to, just getting back in the groove of things.
This will blow your mind. They used to do something called the Skywriters Tour, where the selected by the SEC, the best sports reporters and newspaper columnists in the Southeastern Conference would get on a chartered flight and fly to every campus. They wouldn't come to Birmingham. You would go to every campus, the media would, and over a course of 10 days and do a Skywriters Tour. Sometimes you do 2 in one day. So my first one, I think, was 1989. I may have actually gone to every SEC Media Days.
Wait, that's awesome.
Yeah, like
that's so
I think
fun,
they stopped Skywriters somewhere in the 80s, I think. And then I started in 89. So if I haven't been to every SEC Media Days, it's been close. One year, right after the BP oil spill, we couldn't go on our family vacation at the Gulf. So my whole church group, separate club group, we went to Hilton Head. And it ended up falling on SEC Media Days week. So I pulled some strings from both radio and TV and got off that week. But other than that one post-BP oil spill, I think I've been to every SEC Media Days.
Did you ever get to go to the Skywriters one? Were you in the industry by then?
No. I remember watching it as a kid. Herb Winches, who was on our show recently, the next round, was notorious. He was the prankster on the tour. Like he would, lead the poker games on the flight and, making sure the plane had the alcohol. And he was the guy that led the party on the trip. I never got to do that. I would love to have done that, but I'm not sure I would have survived doing that because they were professional drinkers.
Hey, maybe we can make our own one day.
I am not. I pitched that a couple of times along the way. So you guys remember, next year, let's see if we can pitch with Johnson RV or somebody that we go to 16 SEC campuses in the summer.
So do kind of what Josh Pate is doing, the campus tours.
Yeah, and Joel Klatt, I think he's doing it more West Coast.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. But what am I looking forward to? I love it because everybody is 0-0, and everybody's excited about the new year, and everybody thinks they can win a championship. Even Vandy feels positive. Everybody's positive. And that's what I love about it because everybody feels like this is
our year.
going to be our year.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Okay, so next, Matthew asked, how many opportunities should we expect Bryce Cain and Malcolm Simmons to get this season? So I actually asked Jason Campbell about this because Auburn's wide receiver room is very talented this year.
Stacked.
And that's something that they've lacked in the past. But what he said, because I think the question that's being asked over and over is when will Auburn have another 1,000-yard receiver, because it's been since 1999. And I asked him, I said, do you think this is the year that this will happen because we do have more talent? And he said, no, because there is so much talent. Right. And so kind of a little background for those of you who might not keep up with Auburn super close. The Freeze Four, Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, Bryce Cain, Malcolm Simmons, they're the four, that's what everyone's talking about. But KeAndre Lambert-Smith is also a Penn State transfer. He had over 600 receiving yards last season. So he's expected to be kind of the leader of the group. So I guess speaking just like an umbrella question, what do y'all think fans should expect when there is so much talent in one room and there's not going to be one go-to guy or that we know of yet?
Yeah, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I will. I think the person who's writing in with the question is exactly right. When you are wide receiver by committee, or you just have so much talent, the ability to distribute the football to the off receiver is going to work. We'll use our buddy Terrion Arnold, for example, a first-round draft pick with the Detroit Lions from Alabama.
Love him.
When you go into the game last year, you had Kool-Aid McKinstry was on the best wide receiver. Terrion Arnold was on the second best wide receiver. There's 2 NFL guys. So your third best wide receiver would have some opportunities, right? In the NFL, all the time, the second best wide receiver gets a lot more opportunities. Brandon Ayuk for the 49ers pops to mind. So you throw it to your best guy when he's available, because your best guy gets open sometimes. But sometimes the 2 and the 3 get opportunities because the best guy on their team is not covering you. And I think that Auburn is so deep that it won't shock me if they have a 8,000-yard receiver. But I think it'll be evenly distributed. So I would tend to bet no 1,000-yard receiver. And I would say the same thing about Alabama, no 1,000-yard receiver.
I agree with you, Dunaway. I think it'll be interesting to see how they're utilized, because it's going to depend. I don't think there'll be necessarily a wide receiver 1 like maybe we've seen in the past. I think that you have an opportunity to utilize so many different guys with so many different levels of play and skill. So depending on the play, depending on how guys are lining up, you could see different movement that we haven't seen before. I don't think we'll have a 1,000-yard receiver because there is so much talent, but like Dunaway saying, we won't know that until the fall.
And I will tell you the one reason why I will put Jarquez Hunter as one of my SEC first team all SEC running backs is because you do have that talent at receiver, and that will loosen up the ability to run the football. So maybe you don't pass as much as you think you're going to pass because they're, leaving open men in the box. You got better numbers inside the box, which opens up Jarquez to have a great year running the football,
right,
because Auburn actually has a passing attack.
Yeah, thank God. Next, and this, okay, so I did research on this from, what's that website called that people can just put questions on?
Reddit?
I'm drawing a blank. Yes. My research is on Reddit, so take that with a grain of salt. But Chris asked, he said, at SC Media Days, we need an answer as to why we call the University of Oklahoma OU rather than UO. I thought when I was answering this question, I was like, I bet Dunaway knows the answer, but I'm going to read to you the response that I found on Reddit and then see if you can confirm or deny.
Okay.
If I recall, the Big 8 conference adopted this for all of its schools. So the University of Kansas became KU, the University of Missouri became MU, the University of Colorado became CU, and so on and so forth. Can you confirm or deny?
I do not know the reason why, but that is a true statement because it is the University of Kansas and it's the University of Kentucky and UK basketball and KU basketball. So I'm going to say that is a true. We used to play a game when it was just Brown and me on Dunaway and Brown, the show on AM 690 called Jim or Not. And callers would ask a question or Brown would ask a question, and then I would give my answer, and the caller would have to decide. Well, Brown or our producer would ask the question, and I would give an answer, and the caller, for a prize, would have to decide whether I was telling the truth or lying.
Oh, like 2 truths and a lie?
Or not.
Oh.
Jim knows the answer or he's lying, Jim or not. And we always got confused on which was Jim and which was not. But I would say that he is telling the truth. That makes sense to me because when you think about it, Kansas popped to mind, Colorado pops to mind, Oklahoma, they were all Big 8 schools. So I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
OU. That is,
OU.
I've never really thought about it.
And I don't know if it's the University of Iowa State, but Iowa State University is ISU. So, yeah.
Well, that's what the end of the Reddit user, I'll call him, I don't know what his name is, the end of his answer was Oklahoma State, which was called Oklahoma A&M at the time, then turned to OSU. So it's like everyone ended in U. It didn't matter if you were at the University of
ASU, Kansas State University, yeah. So
Kansas State University.
Yeah. Yeah, not the Big 8, but I know what you're saying. I
right.
went there for shoot a basketball today.
I know.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have to, though.
Yeah, we could have been there right now.
Yeah.
This is something, and this is funny that this question got asked because Lance and I were actually talking about this the other day before the show, but Shoals Guy, Twitter handle, said, do you think Sanky will move the SEC headquarters to Texas? Already have media days there now. He's a sellout. And I said, in my head when I read this, first off, we love Greg Sanky, and
Yes.
I don't think that he's a sellout. And we actually have a, I think, 95-minute interview with him from SEC Media Days last year. If you would like to listen to the great SEC commissioner talk for that long, then you can go back and find that. But Lance was telling me that the Pac-12, he said, look up how much they pay in rent for their
Not owning, rent.
Yeah, in rent for whatever building their headquarters is in. And I couldn't remember the number when that Lance had told me.
I think it was $6 or $7 million a year in San Francisco.
That's what the article that I found said, that they paid over $90 million. They paid $90 million, around $90 million over an 11-year span.
Oh my gosh! So that's
divide that, and you
almost
can get
$10 million a year.
right.
That's incredible.
And that the SEC pays $1
$1
a year in rent. And so because of that alone, I'm like, why would they ever leave?
Yeah, $1. But even if, the only reason it's ever been debated was the ability to easily fly in Atlanta and Nashville are the two cities that are often mentioned, and Charlotte, because of the SEC network being there. Birmingham got really nervous when they put the SEC network in Charlotte, but the reason they did that because that was the old, I forget the name of the channel, NASCAR, maybe it was a NASCAR channel. So they just took over that facility, ESPN did, and made it the SEC network. It could leave someday. I'm not going to say never, but you have to remember these people live here now. They have homes here.
Yeah.
I think almost every employee at the SEC is an SEC graduate. So everybody's got their favorite part of the conference that they're from, but you can't beat the rent that the conference pays.
$1.
They have their own building. They're not like on the 88th floor and
Right.
the 87th floor and the 86th floor. They have their own building. Probably needs to be bigger now. They probably just the city should pay for a replacement, an update.
Well, something else that I feel like Birmingham's, relatively speaking, a pretty central location to most of the SEC. Like,
It used to be, really, a lot before you brought in Arkansas,
Right.
Oklahoma, Missouri, and Texas A&M. It really was.
yeah. So I feel like, I don't know how much of a role that plays in it, because how often are these teams actually traveling? And I don't know. I feel like this was kind of not a serious question,
Yeah.
but it was interesting to me because Lance and I had just had that conversation about the rent.
Long debated, because you guys remember the first two SEC football championship games were actually in Birmingham at Legion Field, and then they moved to the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. And the reason they were in Birmingham was because of the SEC championship. I think the only reason Hoover keeps the SEC baseball tournament is because it's a home game. It's one championship event that the people who work at the SEC offices don't have to pack a suitcase and go somewhere.
Right.
They can sleep in their own beds. Imagine if Birmingham had a great domed football stadium. There's a chance
It would be electric.
they would have never left. Birmingham would have gotten off their butts back when Gene Hallman was trying to pass maps and built that dome stadium in the early 90s. The SEC championship game probably would have been here forever.
Interesting. I don't think that this is considered a sellout. I don't think it'll ever go to Texas, but I can see the argument for moving it to an Atlanta, and that's not my Atlanta bias, or Charlotte, or Nashville even. But I also think the draw to Dallas is obviously Texas and OU, rolling out the welcome mat for them.
Right.
But also, I feel like Dallas in the last few years, I know people our age are literally flocking there, and it's just become one of those cities that is a place to be. So I feel like from a few marketing standpoints, it's very flashy. It's like SEC's going to Dallas. We're meeting Texas. We're meeting OU.
Yeah.
But I do think it's more of a one-off.
You guys, your age, you know how Nashville is a melting pot for the SEC.
Oh.
So many Auburn, Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the best crowds you see every year in basketball is when Auburn plays at Vandy. And it's not Vandy fans. It's all Auburn fans
Right.
who live in Nashville, the Auburn grads.
So many.
So many. They go there. So it's a great moment. So Nashville's a nice melting pot. And the one thing about it being in Birmingham, and because Nick Saban was so good, I think there's a lot of people who have said when they would go to replay, which is in Birmingham, they're like, oh, replay in Birmingham, it's going to go Alabama's way or
Yeah.
maybe Auburn's way. in Nashville, nobody's going to say, oh, it's going to go Vandy's way,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So it could be a little bit more neutral in Nashville, but I hope it never leaves. But even if it does, we're so connected now to Greg Sanky and the guys that I think our friendships would continue 2.5 hours away.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this I feel like there can be so many answers to this question. Ed asked, in your opinion, which SEC teams are going to provide the biggest surprise and disappointment for this season? And I mean, you could go so many different directions with this.
So I have been, in my preparation for SEC Media Days, I have made cheat sheets, color-coded in the team colors naturally, and for every team in the SEC. So I have a reference point, etc. And one team that is just sticking out to me is LSU. And I know the defense is a question. I know their cornerbacks, it's a hot mess right now. But Brian Kelly cleaned house, brought in some great defensive coaches. Do I think, I guess it's this season? That's the question, this season? Or is it just
yes, this season.
I don't think that LSU will win a national championship this year, but I do think that they have the potential to be really, really good, especially with Garrett Nussmeier. And also, I'm not fully bought into Ole Miss. I know that's going to be a popular one. So I almost think the Ole Miss fans could be disappointed if they don't make it past at least the first round of playoffs.
Yeah. I believe Ole Miss and Missouri both think their fans think they're going to be in the playoffs this year, and I have a feeling neither one will be. LSU is where I was going to settle, but I think an LSU fan would tell you we're not a surprise team. I mean, you go back and look. We just won the national championship in 2019 and the Heisman last year.
That kid.
But I think everybody's talking Georgia, everybody's talking Texas, everybody's talking Ole Miss, everybody's talking Missouri, everybody's talking Alabama. Then you get to Tennessee, and then there's LSU, who in the last, since 2002 has been sort of a blue blood in the SEC. So it's hard to call them a surprise team, but I think LSU was my answer too.
Well, that's what Ole Miss comes to mind just because they have been very active in the transfer portal, and I feel like when you're doing that in comparison to recruiting through high school, that's like a win now. You want immediate results. And so I feel like I think EG, kind of like what you just said, could be disappointed just because it's like it seems like they're kind of putting all of their eggs in the basket of the 2024 season. But something else I thought was interesting was I think Alabama could fall into either of these categories depending on who you talk to and how realistic their expectations are. Because, yes, it's Alabama, and kind of like what Roman Harper said on the show the other day, it's Alabama, so the expectations are automatically higher. So if you have a fan that has the mindset more of it's, our head coach's first year.
Realistic.
So realistic, getting into the 12-team playoff would be good. But then there are probably some fans that are like, we should be playing for a national championship. Mm-hmm. So it's like I feel like there's a kind of a gray area in the middle to where Alabama fans, some could be pleased and say, okay, this is a good starting point. And then some could be disappointed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Ole Miss has never done it. No. So to see them doing it is going to surprise me.
Yeah.
Do you think we could see Ole Miss playing for the SEC championship?
I don't. I think the SEC championship game will be Georgia and Texas in a rematch. But, that's just my belief.
Yeah.
Alabama could be in there, Ole Miss could be in there, Missouri. But, I do think Texas, though I'm not a huge fan of the way we're going to Dallas for SEC Media Days, I do think Texas is really good. Yeah. Give them the whole horns down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never put it on
flip
low.
that.
Gotta keep it low.
Keep eye contact.
As I'm emailing their SIDs, being like, thank you so much for your time and consideration. Welcome. We're so happy to have you.
It's the drunk guy on the end.
Yeah. He won't be on the show next week. Don't worry. This is, what'd your jersey say? Jimmy Shooter? Jimmy Buckets. Next week will be Jim Dunaway, not Jimmy Buckets.
That I also, and one more thing on this, I feel like Oklahoma with their schedule, which y'all have talked about a lot on the next round, that is something that, I feel like this season, it could be a train wreck, potentially, because of how hard their schedule is. And I wrote out a stretch of games that they have. Tennessee, Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, LSU.
And I want to see at Auburn, at Ole Miss, at Missouri, at LSU.
Yeah.
And I think if you are an SEC fan, if you're an SEC graduate, if you just miss the old conferences and you're not for realignment, you want to see Texas go into the SEC, and you want to see OU go into the SEC and get absolutely curb stomped every stop.
Yeah.
That's
The problem is Oklahoma has the schedule for that to happen. Texas does not.
Right.
Texas is scheduled. I mean, Georgia at home.
But
Everything else is
Right.
easy peasy.
Yeah, so they're probably pissed. And then Florida, obviously, like, good luck to the
Yeah,
Florida
they're
Gators
struggling.
which I don't think would be a surprise upset. Okay, this is something that I hadn't thought about this since probably last football season, a little bit during basketball season, but I don't really have insight. So I didn't have a ton to say on the question, but Stuart said, please, someone in the media ask Sanky what the league is doing to elevate the quality of officiating within the conference so it is on par with the coaching and athleticism in this league. This is every single basketball and football. I feel like every season it is Twitter.
I will tell you that I am the guy who tells you every weekend, whether it's football or basketball, that if you think the officiating is bad in the SEC, make sure you're watching the other conferences. I mean, officiating is just hard, period. And the SEC doesn't get it right, but the SEC officials, I think, are better than in other leagues. And in basketball, you share officials. So the same one guy could be doing an ACC game on a Monday, and then SEC game on a Tuesday, and then at Samford on a Wednesday, and back at an SEC game on a Thursday. So, but in football, they do have conferences, and it's funny you bring this up because I reached out to Steve Shaw, who used to be the head of SEC officials, used to be an SEC referee, then a head of SEC officials. Now he's the national head of officials, and we're going to have him on the show maybe as early as tomorrow, as we record this on July the 9th.
Yep.
So
10th.
We're 10th. We're going to try to have him on before we go to SEC Media Days. And I was going to ask him, you bring in 2 new teams, so does that mean we bring in 2 new officiating crews?
Right.
Right? And did you go to the Big 12 and try to get their best 2 crews? Like,
Yeah.
one of their best crews is the guy who has unbelievable muscles. Like, he has great arms because he did some of the championships, some of the playoff games. Do you try and go hire him away and bring him to the SEC? And then he started to answer me. I was like, no, save it for the show.
Yeah.
Save it for the show. So I look forward to that. I think you bring in 2 crews, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're 2 lesser crews. You're bringing in 2 from the Big 12, or maybe, I don't know if you go to the Pac-12, but the SEC is where you want to be. So they'll bring in 2 really good crews. They do keep the crews together. Like, if I'm the referee and you're the line, that was very male chauvinist of me. If you're the referee and you're the back judge and
Thank
I'm the
you.
linesman, then that's we stay together. We stay together every
Yeah.
week. So, just so we get used to each other and how we work a game and stuff. It's so hard. The players are so fast. Everything's on replay now. Everybody's got a 70-inch TV, and they can zoom in with a TV broadcast now. And his foot was out. I can't believe they missed this call.
Right. And in real time,
In real time, they do a wonderful, tremendous job. We complain about NFL officials now and everything. We complain about baseball. We're about to get rid of baseball umpires. It's going to be computers soon.
Yeah, that's.
I hate that.
It's going to be horrible. So I would say I understand when calls are bad. And I understand you think the other team gets calls and your team doesn't. Even Alabama fans think the other team gets calls. So
Breaking.
yeah, breaking news.
So actually, this was on my list because next week we'll have a chance to talk to John McDade, SEC coordinator of football officials. So that'll be on Tuesday, and so I've been kind of looking into this. So we will be able to talk to them. But I agree with you, Dunaway. I think what's so hard is this day and age, as the consumer of whatever is being watched, we have the ability to rewind, to pause. The broadcast crews can zoom in. There's a lot more elements to it than the naked eye may see.
Right.
I think it's getting increasingly harder, and to bring baseball up, there are certain nuances to a game that almost rely on a human element of officiating. I'm completely against electronic umpires. I'm completely against any sort of regulation in that sense because there are missed calls that cost games.
I would tell you that, the old saying is you could call holding on every play, but nobody wants to go to the stadium and see holding called on every play.
Right.
If the holding impacts the play, then you call it.
Right.
But if there's holding on the right tackle and the play went left, do you really need to call
No.
that? If it's a running play left and the right tackle held him, do you really need that call? So I think you do have to have a human element. And the UFL, the only thing I don't like about the UFL is they have a challenge on a super challenge, I think they call it, where you could challenge pass interference or holding or, targeting or whatever you want to challenge. And, there are certain things I don't think should be challenged. I think it should be human element.
Yeah.
I think you should also, one more thing, I think as a team, you have to factor that in when you're preparing for games. I think a good coach can factor that in and still come out.
There was when I was a kid, I think it was 1983, I think the tight end was Preston Gothard. Alabama was playing at Penn State, and Alabama fell behind early, and they came back, and what would have been the touchdown pass to take the lead, the referee ruled Preston Gothard out of bounds, and his whole body was laying in the end zone. And it turns out that official was a Big Ten official or independent, Big East, whatever they were an independent then, but traced him back. He had family ties to a Penn State player, or a Penn State. He was a Penn State guy, and he ruled him out of bounds. And I mean, it's one of the most egregious calls in Alabama football history. Everyone, if you ask, Preston Gothard was in, everyone knows that play. But, I mean, there's some plays that you're like, they didn't have replay back then.
Yeah.
That changes everything. I think most times a bad call doesn't really change the game. You have a chance somewhere else to make up for that, or, you get one that goes your way somewhere else.
Well, and I feel like the saying's always don't let, you shouldn't let one call determine the outcome of the game.
How many times did your coach tell you that?
So many times. So many times. And and I agree with it. But going off of that question, I can't remember what game it was after last year, but I think it was a questionable call that a lot of people disagreed with.
It was on the Iron Bowl that was significant. I can't remember what the call was.
There was a muffed punt. I don't remember if this was.
Yeah,
and it very clearly didn't. I would like it on record that it didn't, but that's besides the point. But I can't remember what game it was after, but everyone was like, if the players, these officials are grown men, the players are, some of them are 18 years old, and after a game, they might make a mistake. They might throw an interception, and a lot of times, the players that are making these mistakes still have to go talk to the media. So why shouldn't the officials have to? And I would love y'all's take on if you think that should be a thing or not.
That's interesting because even when I was at Georgia Southern covering football, in Georgia Southern, we still are doing some rebuilding, but that was brought up in the press box of a game after a horrible call. It was an opposing team, SID, was like, we should have to talk to that guy after this. He said it in frustration, but it stuck with me. And then as I've evolved in this industry, that conversation is brought up a lot. And there is something to be said when you walk into that media room, and I'll use the Iron Bowl for example, and you have 18 to 23, now there's like 29-year-olds out there, but that certain age group that's having to answer for their team. Mm-hmm. I do think that it could be an interesting angle and beneficial to have the head official discuss with media, and it can be a select group. It does not have to be a full media scrum, but there's a designated media spokesperson that will go talk to the official, and you don't get 30 minutes with them. You get 2 minutes, maybe max 5 minutes, and you can basically ask about a specific thing, but there has to be some sort of answer given in that time.
They actually do that sometimes. A pool reporter will go and interview an umpire in the World Series or a referee in the NFL in the Super Bowl or something, if there's such a call that is not, if it's a rule that maybe not everybody knows.
So something gets overturned at the plate.
They are able to explain why we had to call that.
Oh, okay. So basically a rules check, but it's not necessarily an open interview to say, how did you miss?
And it's never just the entire media where it would become a bitch fest at that point, right? Every time it would become. There is a pool reporter that goes, and I think it's even happened in college football before, that they would send a reporter in and they would give a statement basically. Mm-hmm. Here's why we called it this way, but some things are just judgment calls, and some things can be corrected on replay, some things can't. Would you want? I do believe that why not, if you've got X number of challenges, why don't you be able to challenge? Let's say in the NFL you got 3 challenges, or in college, which one do you have 3 challenges?
I think
you've got 3 challenges, whatever number it is. You come up with a number of challenges, 2 or 3. And you say, okay, you've used all 3 of your challenges. You challenge whatever you want. If you don't think it's holding.
Pass interference too?
Interference, holding. You only got 3 challenges. Okay, so let's do that. But in college, every play is reviewed. The problem is that they don't go back and change holding or pass interference.
Right.
And maybe they should.
Okay, this next question comes from EG's co-host on the Pennant Grace.
Hey, Ush.
Excluding Navy and Orange, which this because I'm an Auburn fan, but y'all can
I know this.
insert your favorite team's colors.
UNC. Easy money.
Okay. Favorite team color combinations. I said the SMU alternate uniforms, the white with the blue accent.
That is pretty.
No, red, white, and blue is a great color because you get it with the Patriots. Old school Patriots was good. SMU, red, white, and blue. Braves, Dodgers, home uniform has the red number, blue Dodgers on the front in baseball. There's something, and maybe it's because Thompson was this, but we were red, white, and black. There was something about being red, white, and black, and you had that black trim on the red or the white, and that's always been a good combination. But I'm like you, I'm a blue guy.
Yeah.
So am I.
And I like the blues. I like the Rams blue and yellow. I like, Pitt's throwback uniforms that they're wearing now, the blue and yellow. I like I'm not a big fan of the name Rays, even though it's my favorite team, or the uniforms suck and the logo sucks. And it sounds too much. I'm Southern, so my Rays sound like I'm saying Braves. So I don't like that. But I think uniforms, I love a blue in the uniform. Tulane's blue and green can be good. I love Ole Miss's baby blue helmet.
Blue is so good.
So blue and something for me, and especially if you can get to the powder blue.
I love the powder blue
and navy. I do love a red and black, though. I think it looks very clean. I did grow up a Georgia fan, for those that don't know. I've since cleansed myself.
I will say I don't like silver helmets. I like the silver breeches when Georgia wears it, but
breeches,
yeah. Like Brown will say that he likes the old school Seahawks helmet, but I don't like that.
I don't like the metallic.
Silver helmet's okay with the Cowboys because it's iconic.
Yeah.
I like it okay with the Lions.
Ohio State has a silver helmet. I don't really like it.
That's okay.
I don't like the Buckeyes all over the back of it.
I don't like silvers. I used to think, I didn't know what the Buckeye was back then.
Yeah.
And at a certain age, I thought they were pot leaves. I was like, why are they putting pot leaves on their helmet? But it's a Buckeye, I guess.
Yeah, I don't like the helmet. I don't like the helmet.
I don't like the
stickers.
reward for that. I like a clean look. Fun fact before we move on from uniforms, and I was talking to you about this, I think, someone, but Georgia Southern, I always have to talk about it, but Georgia Southern is navy, and we did have a powder blue variation, not for football, but for basketball. I was wearing that shirt yesterday at dinner, actually. But our uniforms were modeled after Alabama's because Irk Russell and Bear Bryant, they were friends. So Irk Russell was at UGA, then he went down to Southern, and he loved the clean lines of the Alabama uniform. So our helmets are exactly the same as Alabama. Our uniforms exactly the same.
Really?
Just navy. Mm-hmm.
What a fun fact.
I know. Gotta go Eagles.
A lot of Alabama folks used to cheer for Georgia Southern back in their D2 days because they had the same uniform and because of Irk Russell. So I think they played the D2 National Championship in our state for a long time, and a lot of Alabama fans would go and cheer for Georgia Southern back when they were a D2 powerhouse.
Yeah, we had I don't even know how many straight national championships. Back in the day, we were a force to be reckoned with. That triple option.
Yeah, the Alabama of D2 or whatever you were in. Yeah.
I'm so happy for y'all over there.
I know, thank you.
Okay, this is something that EG and I actually talked about on an episode months ago or weeks ago.
That was a long time ago.
Feels like a long time ago.
Where were we coming back from? When I was coming back from Bama.
Yeah, you were coming back from Tuscaloosa.
Yeah,
I don't remember why.
I can't remember why.
But we talked about the potential of Auburn switching from Under Armour to Nike.
Yes.
This was before it had been confirmed, announced, anything, but there was a lot of rumbling. Dylan said, do you like Auburn switch from Nike to Under Armour in 2025? So obviously this season, everything will still be Under Armour, and I believe it's July 1st is when the official transition will happen. And I like it just because I feel like, which this is very materialistic, but I feel like that's something that, the players that you're recruiting are, 18, 17, 16, however old, but they're teenagers. So I feel like they care about that kind of stuff to an extent. But I also like Nike stuff personally more than I like Under Armour stuff. So being able, as a fan, there will be more officially licensed Auburn, it won't be Under Armour anymore. So I like that from a fan perspective, just buying gear. But what do y'all think from a recruiting perspective? How much of a difference do y'all think that this actually makes?
Yeah, I will tell you that when Auburn switches, Of the 16 SEC schools, I think that will leave Mississippi State and Texas A&M with Adidas, and South Carolina with Under Armour, and everyone else will be Nike or Jumpman, which is part of Nike. So you'll have 13 schools alike. So, I mean, majority, usually there's a reason why you poll the audience and go with the audience on who wants to be a millionaire and that stuff. I would tell you, though, when Auburn switched to Under Armour and Cam Newton and they win the national championship, you thought the commercials on TV were so cool, the Under Armour commercials back in 2010, 2011, and you wondered, by them being so unique, so few Under Armour schools, and it looked like Under Armour was going to take off in the mid-teens, that you thought maybe Auburn would have a huge advantage, especially in football, by being one of very few Under Armour schools.
Right.
And then that hasn't panned out.
No.
And so being with Nike is the safe play. Adidas, to me,
boo.
It's bad. They're bad in uniforms.
We have Adidas at Southern.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're bad.
No, it's not good.
I would rather have Under Armour than Adidas.
Yes, I think that I wish Georgia Southern would change. I think that merch-wise and team gear, Adidas just does not make very clean designs. It's very cluttered to me. For example, I'm literally going out the door to meet my Pennant Grace co-host, Ush, you, and the Browns for dinner, and it's laundry week. I'm in the midst of it all for next week for media days, and I pull out this women's Sunbelt Champions soccer shirt because I'm like, I have nothing to wear.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't even put this on my body because it is so cluttered. It's Adidas. And I'm like, this is just a hot mess. I literally tossed it aside and then picked up the powder blue Adidas one from Georgia Southern basketball. But from a recruiting standpoint, I think as we continue to evolve in college football, social media is more prevalent, that element of style. And next week at Media Days, we're going to be doing OOTDs with the players, and they care about it.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing by any means. I think that Auburn fans will enjoy the Nike gear. I know you talked about that. Mikey and his brother, they're excited. But to your point, Dunaway, Under Armour and Auburn were very they coincided with each other in my mind. I think the brands of Under Armour and Auburn are very similar in values and just brand voices. I think that there's some similarities, more so than Nike, but I do think overall it'll be good for.
I mean, really, when it started, if you were only 1, 2, 3, 4 schools, 5 schools, I thought, well, I mean, just think of all the money Under Armour's making and how much money they could give Auburn.
Right.
And Nike can only give you so much money.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, it's the right move now. Nike's the right move now. But at one point, I thought Under Armour was the way to go.
That's also, I can't remember what sport it was. I don't think it was football or basketball. It might have been softball. But there were players. It was a cleat situation, and it was.
Happened in basketball one time. Forget who it was, but I mean, basketball foot came out of the shoe. I know it happened to Carmella. I mean, to the kid with the Pelicans, and it was a Nike shoe. I can't remember his name right now. He's with the Pelicans, played at Duke.
NBA is not my specialty. Or
always hurt. Anyway, his foot came out in a big North Carolina Duke game, I think, and it was bad for Nike. But the Under Armour shoe in football, they were hard, they were slick. Nobody liked them.
That's what I remember. There were some, and I'm pretty sure the athletes, I think it was a year or so ago when people started talking about it because they knew the contract was coming up with Under Armour. Athletes started speaking out about it because they were like,
they didn't think it was safe.
Right, and it didn't work well for them. So I'm excited about it, and I think the guy.
I don't think Bruce made his players wear Under Armour sneakers last year. I can't remember. I think some of them were Nikes. But I can't attest to that. Well,
remember we were at a game at Neville Arena, and I think it was KD was wearing. It was a warm-up shirt, and everyone was freaking out about it. They were like, "The deal's done because KD's wearing this, and if they were locked in with Under Armour, they would not be letting that happen because it was obviously a televised game."
Probably was right. Probably the deal was done.
Yeah, and I don't think KD really cares about the rules, so that makes sense as well. But that's going to do it today. As always, you can catch Dunaway on the next round from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central every weekday, and Emily Grace on the Pennant Grace.
Pennant Grace, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I always want to say Tuesdays and Thursdays. Mondays and Thursdays at 12:15. We have a lot of fun. It's also a live show. If you're a Braves fan, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, Braves. We don't get a lot of MLB stuff around here. So
really, ironically, if you don't know this, our office primarily, I think everyone is from the South. Everyone's from the state of Alabama but myself, and I'm the only Braves fan in the office.
Yeah.
That is so shocking to me.
And Ush now.
And Ush.
Yeah.
I guess as one of the 13.
Yeah.
He's
13.
14.
He's there more than some of our full-time employees.
Absolutely. Love
He is.
him.
Yeah, so keep EG Company
Yes.
on
We'd
the
love to
Pennant
have
Grace
you.
if you are a Braves fan. But that will do it for today. And
Awesome.
we'll see y'all in Dallas.
Media days.